The suitcase hit the street, hard enough to twist the wheel sideways. Not dropped. Thrown. It bounced once. Then again. Then stayed there. Open. I didn't stop walking. Not immediately, because the brain doesn't accept that kind of moment on the first try. It checks, replays, waits for context to arrive and fix it. It didn't. The second bag came next. This one split open on impact. Fabric sliding out. A sleeve dragging across the pavement like it didn't belong to me anymore. That's when I stopped. Not because I wanted to. Because something inside me finally caught up. I looked up. She was already watching me. Standing in the doorway. Still. One hand on the frame. The other relaxed, like she had already finished deciding how this would go. She wasn't angry. That's what didn't fit. No shaking, no raised voice, no chaos to explain it. Just calm. Then she smiled. Small. Controlled. The kind of smile that doesn't ask if it's right. It assumes it is. Learn. One word. Soft. Placed. Like this wasn't punishment, just correction. I waited. That's the part no one understands later. I didn't react. I waited. For someone else to enter the moment. To say, this isn't what it looks like. To fix it. To stop her. No one did. There was no one else. Just her. The open door and my life starting to collect itself in the street. She bent down, picked up another bag, threw it. No hesitation, no explanation. That's when it became real. Not the first one. The second. Because 1 can be shock, 2 is decision, then 3, then 4. And suddenly, it wasn't happening. It was repeating. I moved. Fast. Not toward her. Toward the bags. Because when something private is exposed in public, the body tries to hide it, fix it, undo the moment before it becomes permanent. I crouched, grabbed the open suitcase, pushed fabric back inside, and heard her laugh. Not loud. Worse. Soft. Like she was watching something finally make sense. Good, she said. Maybe now you'll get it. Get what? That question hit late. Because this didn't start here. It never does. Moments like this, they arrive finished, built somewhere else, in conversations you weren't part of, in decisions made without needing you. I stood up, looked at her again, really looked. That's when I saw it. The keys, looped around her finger, casual. Like they had always been hers. You need to stop, I said. My voice didn't sound right. Too late. Too small. She didn't move, didn't even blink. No. Just that. Then she stepped back, inside. 1 step. Reached for the door. That was the moment everything inside me reacted before I could think. I moved. Fast. Too fast to stay controlled. Too late to matter. Don't. That's all I got out. The door closed. Not slammed, not violently, just decided. Then the lock. 1 turn. Clean. Final. I stood there, hand still raised, less than a foot away. And suddenly, it wasn't my door anymore. That's the part that stays with you. Not the bags, not even the lock. The shift, home to barrier, in 1 movement. I knocked once, not loud, not desperate. Just enough to give the moment 1 last chance to change. Open the door. Silence, then footsteps, not coming back. Moving away. That's when it settled. Not slowly. Completely. She wasn't hesitating. She was done. I stood there, in the street, surrounded by everything I owned, locked out of something that was still mine. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from the body finally catching up to what had already happened. I reached for my phone, didn't think, didn't plan, just reacted. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Wrong time, wrong moment, wrong everything. It rang again, and something still intact inside me, answered. Hello? The voice on the other end didn't sound confused, didn't sound apologetic, didn't sound random. It sounded prepared. And after the first sentence, I stopped shaking, because whatever she thought she had just done, she locked me out of the wrong story. Is this you? He didn't say my name. That mattered, because people who already know don't need to confirm it. Yes. My voice came out steadier now, not because I felt better, because something in his tone had changed the situation. Not safer, structured. I'm calling about the property. Property. Not house, not home. Property. That word landed clean, cold, legal, real. I need you to tell me where you are. Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? Where you are, position. I looked around, street, bags, my door, locked. Outside, I said. A pause. Short, measured. Then, good. Good. That shouldn't have made sense. It did. Because now, this wasn't about what she had done. It was about where I was when she did it. Do not leave, he said. Calm. Not rushed, not reactive. Do not try to re-enter. That stopped me, because instinct says, get inside, fix it, take your space back. He didn't say wait. He said, don't. Listen carefully, he continued. And just like that, the street disappeared, not physically, but in my head. Because now, everything narrowed to his voice. The person inside that house. He didn't say my sister. That mattered. Does not have legal control of that property. The words didn't hit all at once. They landed in pieces. Control, legal, property. I turned, looked at the door again. Same door, same lock, same silence behind it. But now, it didn't feel the same. Say that again, I said. Not louder, just slower. She does not have authority to remove you. Authority. Another word that didn't belong to family. This wasn't about conflict. This wasn't about argument. This was about position. I felt it shift. Not outside. Inside. Because 10 seconds ago, I was standing in the street trying to understand how I got locked out. Now, I was standing in the street knowing she shouldn't have been able to do it. That difference, Tay, changed everything. How do you know? I asked. Not because I doubted him, because I needed to hear what I had missed. Another pause. Longer this time. Because I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. That landed harder than anything else. 3 days. I didn't check my phone, didn't need to. Because now every missed call, every unread email, every moment I chose not to look deeper, lined up. What is this about? I said. He didn't answer directly. That property, he said, was flagged. Flagged. Another word that didn't belong to normal life. Not argument, not misunderstanding, system. Transfers were made, he continued. Changes were filed. Access was modified. Each word placed carefully, like he was deciding how much I could handle at once. My grip tightened on the phone, not because I was afraid, because something was connecting. Not fully, but enough. My sister, I started. No. He cut me off, not harsh, just final. This didn't start today. That sentence settled deeper than anything else. Because suddenly, the bags, the door, the lock, none of it was the beginning. It was the result. I need you to stay where you are, he said again. Do not engage. Do not escalate. That word, escalate, felt misplaced because I wasn't escalating. I was reacting. But now, I understood. This wasn't about emotion. This was about sequence. And if I moved wrong, I could lose position. I looked down at my hands, still shaking, but different now. Not helpless, focused. What happens next? I asked. Another pause. Short, controlled. I'm on my way. That was it. No explanation, no reassurance, no details, just movement. The line went quiet, then ended. I lowered the phone, slow. The street came back. The bags, the broken suitcase, the door. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't, because now I wasn't standing outside waiting to be let in. I was standing outside watching someone occupy a place they didn't control. That difference was everything. I thought the call would explain things. I was wrong. It didn't explain. It repositioned me. I didn't knock again. That mattered. Because 10 minutes ago, I was trying to get back inside. Now, I was trying to understand why I had been put outside. I picked up the broken suitcase. Not carefully, not gently, just enough to stop it from spilling further into the street. The wheel dragged. Sharp, loud, wrong. That sound felt more honest than anything that had happened in the last hour. I moved the bags closer to the curb, lined them up. Not because it helped, because order gives the illusion of control. My phone stayed in my hand. Screen dark now. Call ended. But the words still running. Property, authority, flagged. They didn't belong to what had just happened, and that's why they mattered. I looked at the door again. Still closed. Still locked. Still occupied. Something moved behind it. Not coming closer. Not opening. Just existing. That used to mean comfort. Now, it meant access. And access was no longer mine. I stepped back. Just one pace, changed the angle, looked at the house like it wasn't mine. That's when I saw it. Small, almost nothing. The lock, not the door. The lock, it wasn't the same. Same shape, same placement, but different finish. Different wear. New. That landed slower than everything else. Because details like that don't shout. They sit. Wait. Until your brain catches up enough to register. This wasn't sudden. This was prepared. I stepped closer again. Not to open it, to confirm it. The metal was clean. Too clean. No scratches, no aging. Recently installed. That's when the timeline shifted. because she didn't lock me out with something that was already there. She replaced it. Before today, before I came home, before the bags hit the street, that meant one thing. This wasn't reaction. This was execution. I turned, looked at the windows, curtains slightly off, inside lights on in rooms I hadn't used this morning. Everything. Subtle, but wrong. Like someone had been living in the house, not visiting. That thought didn't hit hard. It settled, quiet, heavy. Because if she had changed the lock and moved inside and waited, then this moment was never a surprise, only for me. My phone buzzed. Not a call, message, from a number I didn't recognize. Do not attempt entry, wait for arrival. Same tone, same structure, same control. I didn't reply, didn't need to, because now, this wasn't about asking what was happening. It was about not interfering with it. I looked down at the bags. My things, everything I owned, reduced to objects outside a door I still paid for. That contrast felt deliberate. Because someone wanted it to look like this. Wanted the story to be clear, visible, undeniable. She throws you out, you lose control, you stand outside, simple, clean, believable. But now, I knew something that didn't fit that version. She didn't have authority, and if she didn't, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was interference, with something already in motion. I thought the hardest part would be getting back inside. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing someone had already been inside long before I noticed. And they changed more than just the lock. I didn't try the handle. That mattered, because 10 minutes ago, I would have. Pulled, pushed, forced something that still felt like mine to respond. Now, I already knew. The door wasn't the problem. The access was. I stepped away. Not far. Just enough to see the house as an object. Not a memory. Not a home. Something with structure. And structure can be altered. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Short. Bring ID, any documents you have. Documents. That word hit differently because suddenly, this wasn't about what I could touch. It was about what existed on paper. I looked down at the bags again. Not clothes, not shoes. The folder, thin, brown, kept at the bottom of one suitcase I rarely opened. I dropped to my knees, unzipped, moved through layers too fast to stay organized. Fabric, receipts, a book I forgot I owned. Then, there, the folder. I pulled it out, held it without opening it, because sometimes the weight of something tells you more than its contents. Lighter than I remembered. That was the first sign. I opened it. Not everything was gone. That would have been easier. Cleaner, obvious. No. Some pages were still there. Old statements, copies. Things that looked official but didn't matter anymore. The important ones were missing. Title, original deed copy, transfer confirmation, gone. I didn't react, didn't swear, didn't panic. Because this fit. The lock, the timing, the way she stood inside the doorway like she belonged there. It all pointed to the same thing. This wasn't just access being taken. It was position being reassigned. I flipped through the folder again. Slower this time, checking what was left. Not for content, for pattern. What was removed was precise, Not random, not rushed. Someone knew exactly what mattered, and took only that. My phone buzzed again. This time, a call. Same number. I answered. You found the folder. Not a question. Yes. What's missing? I didn't answer immediately, because saying it out loud would make it real in a different way. The ownership documents, I said. A pause. Short. Expected. Good, he said. Good. That word again. Because now, this wasn't confirmation of loss. It was confirmation of pattern. They needed those, he continued. Needed. Not wanted. Not took. Needed. To do what? I asked. Silence. Longer this time than... To file. That landed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. File. Which meant... This didn't happen in the house. It happened somewhere else. Before today. Before the lock. Before the bags hit the street, I looked at the door again. Same door, same frame, same house, you. But now, it wasn't the center of the story, it was the result. They tried to change it, he said. Tried. That word held something. Not succeeded, tried. Did they? I asked. Another pause, then... No. That was the first moment something inside me settled. Not relief. Alignment. Because now... I understood the sequence. They removed the documents. They changed the lock. They staged the moment. But the one thing they needed hadn't worked. Not fully. That's why you don't go inside, he said. Not yet. Not yet. Which meant this wasn't over. It hadn't even started the way they thought it had. I looked down at my hands, still holding the folder, still standing outside the door, but now, not removed, positioned. I thought the moment she locked the door was the moment I lost control. I was wrong. The moment I lost control was when the documents left the house, and the moment I got it back was when I realized they hadn't worked. I didn't ask who. That mattered. Because the moment you ask too early, you give them time to become something else. A stranger, a mistake, an accident you can explain away. No, I stayed with the structure. Because structure doesn't lie. They needed those, he said again, the documents, the originals. Not copies, not versions, the ones that carry weight. They filed something, I said. Not a question. A step forward. Yes. One word. Then silence. He wasn't hiding it. He was pacing it. Because whatever came next would change the shape of everything that came before. Who? I asked. Finally. This time, he didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know. Because once he said it, I would. I turned, looked at the house again, the door, the lock, the space behind it where she was still moving like she belonged. She didn't do this alone, he said. That confirmed it. Not surprise. Alignment. Because nothing about this had ever felt like one person. Not the timing, not the precision, not the paperwork. This wasn't chaos. It was coordination. With who? I said. The pause this time. Longer. Then, you've met him. That landed wrong. Not unfamiliar. Recognized. I didn't say anything. Didn't move. Because now, the name wasn't being given. It was being retrieved from memory, and memory doesn't come back clean. It surfaces in pieces. A handshake, a conversation that didn't seem important, a presence that didn't belong but wasn't questioned. "You saw him at the house," he said. That narrowed it. Not work, not outside, inside. That's when it aligned. Not fully, but enough, a visit. Weeks ago, casual, unplanned, she said, "He's just helping with something." Helping. That word again. Always small, always temporary, always hiding something bigger. "He handled the filing," the voice said. Handled. Not suggested, not advised. Executed. I felt it then. Not anger. Displacement, because suddenly, this wasn't just my sister making a decision inside my house. This was someone else moving through my life with authority I never gave. "What did they file?" I asked. Another pause. Careful. Measured. "An attempt to transfer control." Attempt. Control. Those two words sat together like something unfinished. "On what basis?" Silence. Then, "They claimed you weren't occupying the property." That hit differently. Because suddenly, the bags, the street, the lock weren't just actions, they were evidence. Manufactured, staged, to support something already in motion. "She locked you out," he said. Not as a question, as confirmation. "Yes." Another pause. Then, "That helps them." That was the moment everything shifted again. Because now, this wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. She didn't throw me out because she was angry. She threw me out because she needed it to look like I wasn't there, that I had left, that I had no claim. And the door wasn't just a lock. It was a statement. Closed. Final. Visible. I looked at the street again. My things, my life, spread out like something abandoned. And suddenly, I saw it the way they needed it to be seen. Not mine. Removed. I thought the hardest part would be proving what they did. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing they weren't hiding it. They were building a version of it I was supposed to accept. I didn't knock again. That mattered. Because everything about the moment was trying to pull me back to the door. To argue, to push, to prove I belonged inside. No. If I moved like that, I would be stepping into their version. The one they were already building. "She needs you outside," the voice said. Needs. Not wants. Not chose. Needs. To make it look like you left. That landed clean, because now, everything I was feeling had a function. The bags, the street, the lock. It wasn't random, it was documentation. "Then don't leave," he said. Simple, but different from anything I expected. Not, "Go inside." Not, "Take it back." Stay. I looked around. The street hadn't changed. Cars passed. A neighbor's window shifted just slightly. Someone watching. That mattered. Because suddenly, this wasn't private anymore. And if they wanted a version of events, so did I. I stepped away from the door. Not far. Just enough to be visible. That shift. Small, but critical. Because now, I wasn't someone being removed. I was someone present. I picked up the suitcase, set it upright, even with the broken wheel. Then the second one, closed it, zipped it, not to leave, to show I hadn't. My phone buzzed. Good, he said. He could hear it. In my breathing, in the silence, in the fact that I hadn't moved toward the door again. They're going to escalate, he said. Escalate. Not react. Escalate. Because now they needed more. More proof, more pressure, more of me outside. What do I do? I asked. This time? No pause. Nothing. That felt wrong, because doing nothing feels like losing. But this wasn't nothing. This was position. Stay where you are, he said. Do not argue. Do not try to re-enter. Each instruction removing something they expected from me. Emotion, reaction, movement. Without those, their version wouldn't hold. The door opened. I didn't turn immediately. That mattered. Because reacting too fast means they still control the moment. I waited. 1 second, then turned. She stepped out. Not fully, just enough. Looked at the bags, at me, at the street. Checking, measuring if it looked right. You're still here, she said. Not surprised. Annoyed. Because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. I didn't answer. Silence forced her forward. You need to leave, she said. There it was. The script. Clear. Direct. But now, I could hear it differently. Not as instruction, as confirmation. I live here, I said. Not louder, just placed. She smiled again, that same smile, but thinner now, less certain. No, she said, then she glanced behind her. Small, quick. That was it, the first crack. Because now, she wasn't alone in the moment. She was checking for someone else, for alignment, for confirmation that the version they built was still holding. It wasn't, not completely. I didn't move, didn't argue, didn't step forward. And that was the shift. Because now, everything she did next had to happen without my help. And that's when control changes. I thought the way to take it back was to go inside. I was wrong. The way to take it back was to stay exactly where they needed me not to be. She didn't step all the way out. That mattered. Because people who own a space don't hesitate at the threshold. They cross it. They take it. They stand in it like it belongs to them. She didn't. 1 foot inside, 1 foot out. Balanced, not confident, careful. You need to leave, she said again. Same words, but different, thinner, like she was repeating something that no longer felt stable. I didn't move, didn't look at the door, didn't look at the bags, just at her. That changed the angle, because now, this wasn't about the house. It was about position. You're not supposed to be here, she added. Not supposed to. That phrase wasn't hers. That was the first time I heard it clearly. Not her voice, his. The one behind the filing, the one behind the documents, the one who turned something legal into something visible. She was repeating it, not owning it. I let the silence stretch. That forced her to fill it. You left, she said. That landed wrong. Not because it was false, because it was rehearsed. I didn't, I said. Calm, flat, placed. Her eyes shifted again. Not to me. Past me, toward the street, checking. For witnesses, for confirmation. For someone to silently agree with the version she was building. No one stepped in. That mattered, because now she had to carry it alone. "You weren't here," she said, again, softer, less certain. That's when the door behind her moved. Not opening. Something inside. A shadow. That was enough, because now the second presence was real, not implied. There. I didn't look at it directly. That mattered, because acknowledging it too soon would give it shape, and I wasn't ready for that yet. "You should go," she said. But this time, it didn't sound like instruction. It sounded like pressure, like she needed me to move so something else could stay hidden. I took one step back, not away, wider, changing the frame. Now the door, the threshold, the inside were all visible. That's when it happened. The door opened, just slightly. Not enough to enter, enough to see. A hand, not hers, resting on the edge, still, waiting. That was it. That was the confirmation. She didn't build this. She was standing in it. And whoever was behind that door was the one holding the structure together. She stepped forward slightly, blocking the view. Too late. I had already seen enough. "You need to leave," she said again. Third time. But now, there was no weight behind it, because repetition without control reveals weakness. I looked at her. Not the door, not the shadow, her. And for the first time, I didn't see authority. I saw position, temporary, held in place by something behind her. "You changed the lock," I said. Not a question, a statement. She didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything else, because now she wasn't denying it. She was waiting for direction from inside. I felt it then. Not anger, control, because now I knew exactly where the power was, and more importantly, where it wasn't. I thought this moment would be about confrontation. I was wrong. It was about exposure. The hand didn't move. Still there, resting on the edge of the door like it had been waiting for the exact moment to become visible. Not early, not late. Exact. She shifted again, trying to block it. Too late. Because once you see what's behind something, you can't unsee it. The door opened a little wider. Not enough to invite me in. Enough to reveal control. He didn't step out. That mattered. Because people who need control don't expose themselves more than necessary. I didn't say his name. Didn't need to. Recognition doesn't need confirmation. He looked at me. Not hostile, not defensive, measured. Like he was recalculating something that had already started to shift. "She needs to leave," my sister said. But this time, she didn't sound like the one in charge. He didn't answer her. That silence cut through everything. Because now, the hierarchy was visible, clear. She wasn't enforcing. She was following. He stepped closer to the doorway, still inside, always inside. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Same line, but different weight. Because now, it wasn't repetition. It was ownership. I looked at him. Not at the door, not at the lock, at him. And for the first time, the entire structure made sense. The documents, the filing, the timing, the lock, the staged removal, all of it. Connected. "You filed without authority," I said. Not loud, not emotional. Placed. That landed. Not visibly, internally, because he didn't react. He adjusted. Slight shift of posture, slight change in his eyes. That's how you know you hit the right point. We followed procedure, he said. Procedure. Another borrowed word. Another attempt to turn control into legitimacy. But now, I understood the gap. Procedure without authority doesn't hold. And he knew that. That's why he stayed inside. That's why she stood at the threshold. That's why I was in the street. They needed the picture to complete the story. But the picture was already wrong. You needed me gone, I said, not asking, stating. So it would look like I left. Silence, not denial, recognition. Because now, everything they had built was exposed in one line. The bags, the street, the lock. Not reaction, evidence, and suddenly, it didn't matter that I was outside. It mattered that I hadn't left. That difference, destroyed everything they were trying to prove. He looked at me again, longer this time, not calculating, understanding, because now he knew. The version they created wouldn't hold. My sister shifted beside him. Small movement, but enough. Because now, she felt it too. The change, the loss of control. What do you want? She asked. That was it. The break. Not anger, not dominance, uncertainty. I didn't answer immediately. Because this wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what they had already lost. I'm not leaving, I said. Simple, final. That was all it took. No argument, no escalation. Because the moment I didn't move, the story stopped working. He stepped back. Just slightly, but enough. The door began to close. Not slammed, not forced, controlled. Just like everything else he had done. But this time, it wasn't closing on me. It was closing on them. I stood there, still. Not removed, not displaced, present. And that was the one thing they couldn't change. I thought the moment she locked the door was the moment I lost everything. I was wrong. The moment I lost everything was when I believed what they showed me. And the moment I took it back was when I stopped moving the way they needed me to.